My whole intention is just to be able to reveal to you a little more of the essence of the work, the vision behind the work, and of course the course itself, the structure and kind of the scope of the deep coaching intensive. We recognize that in the coaching marketplace, there are probably thousands of choices that you could be making. And I know it can be a little bit overwhelming and confusing. So I'll give you a little bit of background on the deep coaching approach. And I'll be, really honest, when I first developed this was back in like 2013. It was very much based on a couple of things. One was my own journey of transformation. And the things that I noticed that mattered to me in that, and what mattered to me in that was a sense of my own self and soul, like really connecting with the deepest part of who I am as a person. That mattered. Kind of understanding the way that life is at its more expansive levels of reality, like how consciousness works at very expansive levels. Like that felt important to me to understand how I can shift myself into these more expansive states, and then what happens for me in the way that I perceive, the way I think, the way I feel, the way I connect and relate to the world and to other people. That felt very important. So all these pieces kind of came together in my own life. And then I started coaching. And that's when things got really good. Like I found that coaching for me, and I was doing adult learning and development facilitation training for like many, many years. But what I found in coaching was that it was something in that one-to-one relationship that felt, and I love that word, alchemical. Like it felt as though something greater than the individuals was transpiring in those spaces. But the way that I've been trained as a coach, which was much more of a transactional approach, like very linear and very objective and goal-oriented kind of coaching, wasn't actually the kind of work that I was doing with the people that were coming to me. And the people that were coming to me were asking, kind of seeking to drop further into the depth of their own being, to really kind of peel away a lot of the layers that they had accumulated, layers of, let's say, layers of mind and layers of energy. So mind being like limitations around beliefs, limitations about ideas about who they are, the way that life is, or how they should be living. And they'd become disconnected within themselves over the years. And then there was also this, in many of them too, this desire to heal themselves. And I don't mean healing as in I'm broken and I need to fix myself. I mean healing as recognizing the essence of who I am at the core, and then doing the work to release all of that which stands in the way of me being able to really be in the essence of my core. So that healing piece of it. And I was really fascinated by that because in my own journey, I was doing a lot of personal healing work. And the question came to me, well, if I'm doing healing and this other thing I'm doing is coaching, but somehow it feels like they need to interconnect, like they need to come together. And that was, I think, the day that deep coaching was born, was the day that I asked, like, how does healing and coaching, how do they come together in a really enlivening space in which people feel safe enough to touch the core of their being, and they feel safe enough to open to me their most shadowy parts, the parts that they may not reveal otherwise in their life, but the parts that if they're not attended to, those are the parts that then become a kind of barrier to experiencing higher levels of selfhood and to experiencing a more authentic and real way of living. And along with that then comes kind of more joyful way of living, a more easeful way of living. The stresses of life seem to start to fall away. We smile more. These things begin to happen as we connect with a more essential self at the core and as we do the healing work. So deep coaching was really born out of that question, like how do I merge healing and coaching? And how do I merge my interest in consciousness and the shifting of human consciousness? So we move away from this idea that coaching is this linear process of kind of questions by the coach and answers by the coachee that take us to these objectives that people set, into a space that is much more like a cocoon. I love this idea, the image of the cocoon, right? Of the chrysalis that surrounds the butterfly. And in that, there is this journey of transformation, which is a dynamic of a kind of death of the old self at simultaneously emergence of the new self. But there seems to be, and this is what I learned over time, is that cocoon matters. Like what that cocoon is woven of matters immensely. That the cocoon in the caterpillar situation is the perfect textile, if you will, for what needs to happen inside. But as coaches who are supporting people on this journey of transformation, we too create a kind of container that is woven of something. And the fabric, if you will, of that container that we create matters immensely in supporting people to do this deep inner work of connecting with that deeper essence being and of healing all of that which stands in the way of really just true self knowing, right? So we want to learn how to create this cocoon, if we will. And this is a good metaphor for what deep coaches aim to do in the coaching space. And once you've created a cocoon, it's a lot less about going from A to B and a lot more around, okay, what is it that is no longer, like the no longer in me, the dying part of me that needs attention? And what is it trying to show me? And what is that emergent part of me? That part of me that feels greater than perhaps I've ever known about myself. That's beginning to emerge within that. And how do I give that attention? And then how do we help evolve with these two dynamics that are playing out? Because it's kind of like a death and emergence dynamic. So a big part of the deep coaching intensive then, I should maybe say that the work of the deep coaching intensive has a few parts, but one of the big parts is understanding the stages and the dynamics and the patterns of this thing we call human transformation. Because when we understand the stages and the dynamics and the patterns, then we can best position ourselves to actually support it in a meaningful way. Because what I've noticed is that if coaches don't understand the dynamics of transformation as a real human process, is that they kind of get in the way. The coach gets in the way of another person's own transformation. And I'll give you like a simple example. I once went into a coaching session with someone who claimed that they could help me with, where I was going. And I was in the midst of my own deep transformation. And it was just this endless intellectual inquiry into what I was experiencing and what I wanted and what I wanted to take action on and what I wanted to achieve. It was so not aligned to me needing to sense into myself into emerging potentials. You see the difference? Inquiring into seeing where something needs to go and land versus sensing into emerging potentials. And it was just getting in the way. Like I couldn't listen to myself. And I honestly believe that the greatest gift that a deep coach can give to another human being is to give that person the capacity to listen to themselves. I mean, at a core level, what is stirring in me? What is alive in me? What is no longer in me? What wants to move in me? What wants to be like to be able to listen to yourself, to follow that inner guidance, and to be able to put your life in its hands, to be able to trust that it's all in you. Like we've heard this before, right? It's all in you. But you wouldn't believe people just don't trust that necessarily because the outside noise, the world is just coming at us constantly. There's advice, there's opinions, there's ideas about how we should live. It's just constantly coming. So to step into a deep coaching space, this cocoon is like you can just visualize like there's this field of kind of silence, but it's really rich silence. And in that there's this potential to tap into these various dynamics of ourself that are kind of at play in that cocoon. So we want to help the coach understand the patterns and the stages and dynamics of transformation so that they can begin to create that cocoon, to understand what that cocoon is woven of in human terms. So that when a human being, a person who's ready for this work, steps into that with us, we feel confident and solid that we understand that no matter what's transpiring for them, we have the capacity in ourselves to hold that space for whatever they're going through. Because transformation, and you probably, if you're on the journey yourself, will know this, that this is no bed of roses. Transformation inherently is challenging immensely because it's asking you to question perhaps everything you've ever been taught about yourself and the way that life is. And on top of that, you're asking huge questions like, who am I? Or what is my life purpose? Or what is the meaning of life? Is there more to life than this? Like these are big questions. And there's not just some simple answer. I mean, you can read books and people will tell you their opinion, but the true journeyer of transformation needs to discover and answer those questions for themselves. And it's not easy. It can take years, it can take decades to move through a deep inner transformation of the self and to kind of emerge in a sense as the new you, which is really just essence you leading the show, much more than ego you leading the show. Yeah. So we have these different parts of the course. One is the part, as I mentioned, the stages, the dynamics, the patterns, so you can create the space in which people can really connect with the deepest part of themselves. That's part of it. But the other big part is, and this is where I think the rubber hits the road, tire hits the road, so to speak, is that we want this to be a journey of transformation for you above all else. So this is what separates us in some ways from other coach training programs, is that we really focus on taking you through the journey of inner transformation over the 7/8 month that this course exists, because we work with one axiom, and that is this, that our transformation is what truly enables transformation. If I have not walked this journey, which is a heroic journey, it is the greatest journey of life. If I have not walked this, if I have not walked that path to the depth of my own being, I am not equipped to guide other people to the depth of their being. It's kind of like if you're trying to help someone do a deep sea dive to the ocean floor, but you're doing it by standing on the beach yelling instructions because you've never done it yourself. You get the idea. And it's the same on a human term. Now, not all coaching programs require that. Many of them will just teach you an approach, a methodology, and you can simply take those skills and those techniques and just apply them in a coaching context. And I'm not disparaging this. This is foundational work. And coaching, there's so many types of coaching, and they all have a time and a place, and they all have the perfect context. But deep coaching wants to ensure that we ourselves walk the journey so that we can stand as a way shower, so that we can stand in this world as one who's walked the path. And that doesn't mean that we become totally transformed, right? That we have to be this thing called totally transformed. I don't even know what that is, honestly. It's a never-ending journey, but at least we're walking the path of the transformed and transforming mind. We're walking the path of mastery so that we can speak of mastery to others. So this is a huge part of the program, is that we want to take you into yourself to explore all that you are, so that you can then in turn hold space for others to explore all that they are. And that is really, for me, the absolute beauty of the work. So it's a transformative approach. It's very much a spirit-based approach. Spirituality is woven in. Now, that doesn't mean that we are teaching a spiritual philosophy or that we're teaching any spiritual knowledge necessarily, but more that we recognize that we are spiritual beings on this human journey. And that there are people on this transformational journey who are going to want to speak about soul, about their spiritual nature, that they'll want to experience more of their spiritual nature, because this is effectively where this journey takes people. It takes them to the most real part of who they are. So we don't want to leave that off the table. We want to be able to say we acknowledge the role that spirit, which you could say is this vast evolutionary intelligence, plays in our own transformational journey, that there's an intelligence that is guiding and leading and making this happen. And if we can listen and learn how to partner with that intelligence, that I'm calling spirit, kind of with a capital S, very open definition. If we can learn how to partner with that, then again, we begin to accelerate movement into higher levels of selfhood and higher levels of being and higher levels of potential in our experience of life. So it's a spirit-based approach. It's also very much a presence-based approach, which means that we recognize that the real power that we have as a coach is not the questions we ask. I make a joke when I teach this course, and I say to the students, I don't ask very powerful questions at all. I ask the most mundane questions. I might ask a question like, can you tell me more about that? That's not a particularly powerful question. It's a really mundane question. So I'm learning to let go of the need to ask powerful questions because I'm recognizing that the power of my presence, the state of my being, the state of my consciousness, as it creates that field that I bring to the conversations and the spaces that I connect with other people, that is doing work that my conscious mind cannot comprehend, but we can learn to understand how it works because it has a certain resonance, a certain feel, a certain vibration to it. And when you're in that space with another human being, this is when magical things happen. For me, it's when I say when the two, like the coach and the coachees, in a sense, the two become as one. The the sense that there is separation between us, the sense that I'm a coach and you're the coachee, all of that will fall away. And you are just there in the field with that other human being. And that is the quality of presence that we can learn to bring to all our interactions. We're simply being there in a very open-hearted, very unifying way with other human beings does something to the field, and it impacts people in very positive ways. They begin to open their hearts more, they begin to breathe more, they begin to relax into life, they start to trust, they start to think differently, perceive differently, feel like, I mean, it just grows and grows and grows. But this is a quality of the work. So it's spirit-based, it's presence-based, it's healing oriented, as I mentioned. And I meant, like I said, healing is just this idea that we can begin to recognize who I am at the core of my being, to recognize my wholeness and completion. That is me in essence. That ability to recognize that and to hold that and live through that, that is what it means to heal. It's not this idea that, something's broken. So that's some insight into the nature of this work and what we're inviting not only students to experience, but when then you in turn invite others to sit with you in a coaching space, what you're inviting them to experience with you. Yeah. So many people do kind of venture into the world, beginning to look at what it would take to set up a practice of some sort. Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be full time on day one, but there's a desire to put this work into the world through their own kind of unique expression of it. Another path that I've noticed people take too is that they continue because they're in the midst often of a kind of a journey of discovery. And they then move from this into another kind of learning experience, and then another learning experience of different types of things that they're interested in. What I've noticed then is that they eventually come to the point where when they start to consider a practice, it's this culmination of a whole number of different things that they've learned in their journey. And it's really wonderful to watch how people can put things together. I think the most wonderful of all is the pathway of your own destiny. I guess that's the best way to put it. Maybe that's not the right word. Destiny is a kind of, but the sense that when you finish this program, you're going to be in relationship to the world in a different way. And may not know exactly where you're ultimately going to end up, like that sense of calling to greater purpose. You're like, I sense there's something in me that wants to really bring my full self to this world, but I don't know in what form or how that will take. Maybe I'll continue education for a while. Maybe I'll be beginning something that calls to me. Maybe there's a project that seems to sparkle that I want to bring to life. But what I've noticed is that you can't foresee too far sometimes. That you have to start to learn to just move with what's there in your field and trust that life has your back, that life is taking you on an amazing journey. Like I've had this one woman that took the DCI early on, and she became a coaching client at one point. And she talked to me about her life purpose a lot in those coaching calls. Like, what am I here to do in this world? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And I remember once on one of the calls, she mentioned that a friend of hers had a coaching program approved at the local prison. And this was in the United Kingdom. And she was invited to help support this woman deliver this 1 or 2 day program in this prison. I'm not kidding. Today, years later, she has founded this extraordinary organization in the United States that brings all of this work to prisoners all around the United States. She could have never guessed that that's where she was going to end up at the end of the DCI. She could have never said, I'm going to be doing that. It wasn't even in her field of possibility. But one day a little bird landed on her shoulder, chirped something in her ear, and she said, "Oh, that sounds interesting. I'll go check out what that is." And one thing led to the other, led to the other. And she found herself in a place where her passions, her interests, and her highest purpose all kind of met one of the world's great needs. And there she is. So that's why I say I think the most common path is the path of just being willing to allow life to move through you and move you. And let's see where it goes. And where I can guarantee you it goes is going to be something incredible when you really open it to it. You just maybe can't see it quite yet. And I know that's not always easy to sit with, but that is a big part of our journey too, navigating the unknown.